I basically view everything as a hyperlink. I just want to click on the world and see what it goes to. I can't believe that I'm so far through this life and that there's so little left. I can't believe this doesn't go on forever.
Imagine you go to sleep one night and you find yourself in a lucid dream. You could dream whatever you want. Any sort of joy, pleasure, any experience you want. If you could fantasize about it, you could experience it. Then you wake up the next morning and you get to have whatever dream you want again. And again, it's a lucid dream. And again, you explore pleasure and all sorts of excitement. But sooner or later, Watts points out, you're going to get bored with this. What you're going to do is you're going to throw out some obstacles. You're going to set up the possibility for failure. You're going to set up situations where you do fail. Because if you don't fail, then the successes mean nothing. And soon you'll be living a life in your dreams of complexity, of struggle, of pain. And then he says you'll be living a life much like the life you live now.
Existence. Why do we exist? Why do we suffer? And how do we move through a world that feels torn? Between opposing forces, between right and wrong, between compassion and brutality. These aren't abstract questions, they're necessary ones, because somewhere along the line many of us stop questioning at all. We surrender our critical thinking for the comfort of belonging. We adopt the language, beliefs and outrage of the tribe we want to fit in, often without noticing when our own reasoning quietly slips away. As individuals, our perception is never neutral. It's clouded by emotion, by fear, by prejudice, by the deep human desire to belong. That's why moral courage matters, why eternal vigilance matters. Not the loud kind, the quiet kind, where we hold ourselves to a higher standard than the one demanded by systems, codes, or crowds.
Everything is instant. Everything is easy. But pause for a moment. What happens to a muscle that never lifts weight? What happens to a mind that never faces resistance? What happens to a spirit that never waits, struggles, or strives? Ease feels good, but it comes at a quiet cost. Why bother? The app will do it. The service will deliver it. The machine will remember it. And slowly, without ever noticing, the ease that once felt like freedom begins to shrink your world. You become dependent, not because you're weak, but because you've been seduced. The thrill of mastery is replaced by the numbness of consumption.
True honor isn't defined by rules. It's defined by acts of humanity, by empathy, by choosing to value the individual and the fragile, shared nature of being human. As human beings, we are small points of awareness, moving through a single direction of time that feels relentlessly forward. And yet, inside our minds, time collapses. We already know how the story ends. We know there will be loss. We know there will be suffering. We know we will die. And that knowledge can make us retreat, shrink our lives to something manageable, predictable. But the real challenge isn't avoiding that truth. It's choosing to live anyway. Because only when we do open ourselves to what life also offers, beauty, love, meaning,
the satisfaction of building is replaced by the boredom of scrolling. Convenience doesn't just save time. It steals resilience. It erases patience. You don't feel the chains at first because they're woven from silk. But make no mistake, ease has a price. And sometimes the price is who you were meant to become.
the closer humanity comes to perfecting its idea of paradise, the more impatient we become with it. Something is missing, some tree that won't grow, some hunger that refuses to be satisfied. When the world becomes bright with reason and riches, this is often what happens. An emptiness emerges, one no amount of wealth, progress, or optimization can fill.
That same insulation dulls the vibrancy of life. Joy feels muted because we no longer have true contrast. Victory feels hollow because there was no real struggle. And the worst part? When true discomfort eventually finds us, and it always does, we stand there, brittle and panicked, unsure how to cope. Not because we're weak, but because we've been numbed for too long.
The outer world always shapes the inner one, and inside us live contradictions, unconscious fears, competing desires, pathologies formed through nature, nurture, and experience. These inner tensions can quietly disconnect us from others, from ourselves, from any clear sense of who we are. We fall into routines, structures, patterns, and we take them for granted until something breaks, and suddenly we propelled back into awareness. It's strange how easily human identity can be erased, not through violence or catastrophe, but through mundanity, through repetition, through quiet submission, until one day we wake up feeling alienated from our own desires, our hopes, our dreams. There is a silent desperation that lives in ordinary life, invisible, unspoken, yet deeply human. That inner drive, passion that pushes us beyond survival, the force that makes us create, express, and risk, the longing to be consumed by something meaningful, even if it costs us. We are a humanity reaching for transcendence while bound to very real limits. And meaning, real meaning, becomes an act of revolt, a choice, an expression of inner freedom, something that remains ours even at the very end. Love? Well, go out into the world, experience it, let it hurt you, not as accumulation, but as transformation. Alan Watts said, "Love creates virtue out of vulnerability. Love empties us, rearranges us, leaves us fuller and hungrier. Love is the ultimate humanizing force. And if humanity is one shared soul, then hurting another is hurting ourselves. To live truthfully is to acknowledge this connection, to share, to stay awake, to allow life to happen to us. That may be the bravest thing we ever do."
Want to live a life of meaning, you have to choose to some extent a life of suffering. Why would evolution be so malevolent to curse us with pain? But there's actually a perfectly good evolutionary argument for this. It serves the function of training you to avoid things that damage the body. Pain pushes you away from things that would hurt you. If the purpose of pain and fear and grief and all of that is to avoid them, why do we sometimes seek them out? Why do we do things like push our bodies to the limit? So where is the lure of the negative? Why are we drawn towards them?
Be good to each other. Try. It's a grand adventure. And make sure you have some fun before it's lights out.